Over the past few months or years, I've really gotten into 3D printing, and I picked up a new printer. This is an AnkerMake M5C. It spools up the top, it runs down the Bowden tube, and has direct drive into the extruder down there where the AnkerMake is. It's a gantry system. It works well. It's incredibly easy to assemble. I did not go through any of the assembly video because there's plenty of those on the internet, and I'm not adding any value there. But it's a heavy machine. It has a solid aluminum base and no screen and a button. Now that button's interesting because it allows you to do a couple different things, but doesn't give you a lot of information. One of the primary ways to interact with this printer is through its app, and you can change what the button does through there, but there's again not a lot of feedback on the device itself. This machine moves on XY through a single set of rails at the bottom, and you can see with the high-speed printing, there's some stuff coming off of my guide wheels already, and it's not a protected belt system, so stuff can fall in there, or you have stuff that falls off to the side. It's easy to clean up, but something to be aware of. One of the things I totally dig about this printer is its textured build plate. It has these little clips in the back to make sure you align it properly every time so it doesn't slide off or do anything else. But you do need to make sure when you're putting it in there that you don't get up on one of those because your bed will definitely not be level. But it's magnetic, it'll snap into place, it's nice and heavy duty, and it's dual sided. So if you print on one side and gum it up, you just flip it over and do the other and it will work just fine. While this machine is app enabled, internet enabled, you can run everything off a USB stick. It's just a little bit more work, and you have to do it through the actual software. We'll talk about how to do that in a moment. Now, the AnkerMake M5C comes with its own software, and it's not bad. There's some other things you can do with it, but it's not bad. So to start off with, we're going to go from our object list here. Let's go into our desktop and find a Benchy for us, and we'll load up a 3D Benchy, open it up, and it will import in pretty quick. Nothing too big a deal. You can rotate around. It's just by holding the left click button. When you have the object highlighted, you have a whole bunch of options. If you unselect it, those options disappear. Sometimes the software is a little laggy for whatever reason. I don't know why that is, but it works just fine. So when we click back on there, we can go in, we can arrange, which we don't need to do because we only have one. You can move it, you can rotate it, scale it, and place it on different areas there. And then you have options of splitting objects, which I have not played with at all. We can cut, we can do seam painting, and then we also have paint on supports. So we can actually add on manual supports if we'd like. On the right-hand side is where really all the action actually happens. You have your printer, so you can go to the drop down here and choose what different type of nozzle you have, and you can go into settings and play with your actual machine, which is awesome. There's a lot of settings that you can go in here for the exact thing. So if I know extruder 1 here, I put a bigger diameter nozzle on it, maybe a 0.6. I can go in and set that inside of there. I can set machine limits so it doesn't exceed any of the speed ratings. If I want it to slow down, I can slow it down as the main thing goes there. I can also add some custom G-code if I want. I don't need to do that. And then if we take a look inside of here, there's lots of stuff you can do to get everything set there, which is super cool. Underneath that, you have your filament. I just use it as AnkerMake PLA Plus Basic White. It seems to print fine with whatever filament I throw in. For today's printing, I'm going to use a Creality white print that I got on sale on Amazon for like $12 a spool. And then we have some preset settings. We have precision, which is going to be the slowest of the prints, but it'll go through and make sure everything looks beautiful. Normal is just what you expect, and then fast flies. This thing is going to move very quickly. But within each of these, if you'd like, you can also go in and go to expert mode, and we have a whole bunch of options in there. We can change our first layer heights, our shells, all of that stuff. I mean, there's just options for days. Infill, we could choose the percent infill along with the style of it. We can go through and figure all of that stuff. If you want a skirt or a brim, it always prints with a little bit of a skirt for whatever reason. It will always have that along with a brim as well. And I'll show you that when we slice. We can support material if we'd like. So if you need a model that has to have supports, you can generate them here. And I will say, in my experience with this particular printer, the support material is fantastic. It breaks away very easily and very cleanly and stays and supports the object. I've in the past had issues with support material not breaking away easily, and this one does it perfectly. I'm very happy. We can set the speed parameters if we'd like. We have multiple extruders, which we don't have, and then we can go into advanced and really play in there with some stuff. But let's go back here and just get out of that. We're going to go back into easy mode, and we're going to print our first one here on precision. So the first thing we have to do is slice it. So we'll click on slice now. it will go through and slice it up. It will give you an idea of how long it's going to take. So this Benchy on just its simple mode here is going to take 53 minutes to print. It gives us a warning that there's some printer stability issues. We can click on that and see, hey, what's going on? It has low bed adhesion, so we can take a look and see why that might be. But that's kind of that's what the Benchy is supposed to be. Then it color codes all these things. So you can see the perimeter, we have all of that, and then we have our brim that it always is going to print, well, by default. If you're using the default settings, it will use that all the time. Now, we're not going to use any supports on this because we want to see how it does and what's going on with it. But we can step through the different layers if we'd like and see kind of how this thing comes to be. It also allows you to go through and see the exact toolpaths and the exact G-code for each layer if you want to do that. When you have all that stuff ready and you're happy, you can see it's going to use 10 grams of filament down here. I'll give you the size and the print time. I wish some of that stuff would show up here, but it's fine. Then I'll go to print. It will show up automatically. That's the name of our printer because it's on our network, which is a Wi-Fi enabled one. If I didn't want to do that, I can export it and throw it onto a thumb drive and then throw that into the computer. But then we'll go to print. And after that, it's going to go over to the device menu and it's going to start the option of getting ready to print. So we can see the exact nozzle temperature and how hot the bed is, what it's actually doing, and then there's a time down here. One thing you need to know, though, is that if your computer goes to sleep when it's printing, the print will go fine. It has the files, it does its thing, but this timing will not be accurate. No matter what you do, it will not be a correct time. Even if you wake the computer up and try to open up the software again or whatever, it will not work. The app, on the other hand, will tell you exactly what you need as far as the right time goes. And the only reason this timer hasn't started yet is because we're heating up our bed to get it going. So we're going to take a look at the difference here between a Precision, a normal, and a quick Benchy, both in respects of time and also quality. So we'll take a look at that in a moment. But if you don't want to use software, you can run things through the app. So if you go into Explorer, you can go through and see a whole bunch of models that have been made and optimized for the Anker Make. Some of them are really well done, others are not. You can see there's prints there for screens because you can actually buy a screen for this device, which would make it way better, but the screen's a little too expensive to look at and to explore. But if you're not into model creating or doing anything like that, you can go through and pretty much find anything. There are tons of sources, and if you go back up to the top, let's say we want to find a 3D Benchy, we can just click on search. We can find our Benchy by searching models, or it happens to be the first one on there, and that's provided by Prusa Research. And all we have to do is scroll through there. We'll find our download spot. We'll download it, pick the exact model that we want. We're just going to grab that original STL file for the Benchy, and it will download to our machine. And once it's downloaded, all we have to do is hit print on our phone and it will start printing. And this was a 17-minute print if you want to know. So for this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to print 3 different Benchies, all at different qualities that are preset inside of the AnkerMate slicing software. So we're going to go with precision, we're going to go normal, and then fast. We'll take a look at the times and also the end quality of what we get out of this machine. I've also moved it upstairs just because I have a little bit more space, and you can see the robust cooling that this thing has, which is one of the reasons why it's able to print as fast and accurately as it is. Now I'm using a Benchy that I downloaded right off of Thingiverse, and I didn't use any of the presets as far as what AnkerMake had for their optimized one, which can print in 17 minutes. It has some compromises. These are the real world ones if you're using the presets inside of the AnkerMake software. You'll also notice how the right one finishes much quicker, but it's a much dirtier build plate as far as stringing and other stuff that's just left over. There's a lot more there, whereas with the precision one, there's a lot less of that stuff that kind of gets spit out over time. But you can see the time differences between the 3 settings. Now this is the precision plate as soon as it ended. You can see the brim around the edge along with the skirt to make sure it's all there. And you're going to notice this little purge line along with these random little circles that it does the test with. The first time I started this printer up, I was really weirded out by that because it looked like it was printing off the plate. It's fine, just give it some time. The whole thing lifts up and you can see it's attached well, but it's still hot right now. So when it cools down, it will be just fine and pop right off. Now these are our 3 final prints. I don't know what the order is here, but they look very similar to each other, even though the time difference spent on them is very different. We're going to explore these a little bit more in detail here in just a moment, but get an idea here, there's not a lot of difference between them and there is a big time difference. So this is our precision print. You can see the logo came out really nicely at the bottom there. I really dig that textured surface. There's not a lot of stringing between things. There's not little fibers hanging off. There's a few here and there, but that may also be the filament, not necessarily the quality of the print or the printer. The top is beautiful. The steering wheel and side's nice. All the arches look really good. That's for a future project coming up. This one is for the normal setting. Again, the bottom looks great. There's essentially stringing in all the same exact spots. There's a little coming off the top edge there, but overall it looks pretty good. And another thing is like a game breaker here, or kind of an end deal. We can go through and clean this up very easily and make it look like a perfect benchy without much work. And then we finally have our fast preset. You can see there's slightly more stringing towards the bottom of the opening there, especially on the side. And you can see the layer lines just a little bit more clearly. They're not super there, but they're a little bit more visible on this one than the others. Especially right out near the front edge there, there's little stuff sticking out, and you can see a little bit more stringing. The arches aren't quite as nice. The circle on the back of the wheelhouse isn't as perfect as what it is on some of the others. But really, I'm very, very happy with the quality of these 3 prints and the time that it took to kind of go through and figure out exactly what works best. Now, I know I mentioned the biggest drawback to this for me is not having a screen. You can add one. It's $50. It's out of stock because I'm looking at Canada's version for whatever reason. But they are available, and they're $50. It plugs in via USB-C cable and does have a ribbon connector as well. And then there's mounts and stuff that you can get to do it. But basically, it's just going to show you your print time and how much filament and temperatures. And that's about it. It's not a touchscreen. You cannot control anything from here. You just get some basic information about the printer itself, which is awesome. I wish this had just a little output screen just with the time remaining. Even if it's like a calculator kind of screen, that would be totally fine. $50 for this little screen is just way too much in my book. They also sell different type of nozzles, so you can get a 0.2 nozzle, 0.4, 0.6, and all the way up to 0.8. Their nozzles are not typical. The shaft in here where the screw or the threads are is much longer than a typical 3D printers, so you have to buy these ones as opposed to getting typical ones here. And if you go into Anchor Make store, they have a whole bunch of stuff. You can get little socks for things. They sell more build plates and more material and all that stuff. Now, you can see here, this one is $300. It comes with a $40 coupon at the current time. I got this for $320. I don't know if you can do much better than that for high-speed printing. This thing prints at 500 millimeters a second. It prints reliably, cleanly. I've gotten some really nice material and really nice stuff off of it. I'm very, very happy. And the slicing software is actually really good as well. You can also go through and use Cure or Orca Slicer. There's profiles for most of these printers in there already if you wanted to do that. But I can't recommend this printer enough, and I would recommend it way more than their other printer, which is the M5, not the M5C. The M5 comes with a screen, has a little bit more robust build on the gantry, and then also has 2 rails at the bottom to kind of move it along. But this thing levels out quickly. It does all of the things really nicely, and I don't think it's worth the upgrade cost on the M5 versus the M5C to get essentially just a screen and some additional rails. That's really all you're getting in difference between this and the other one. So M5C all the way if you're choosing between those 2 printers. So let me know your thoughts on this printer. I have some big ideas that I want to try out with it, but we'll see what happens, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining me, and have a good one. Bye-bye.